Okay, physics geeks, really quick, just a hopeful understanding the two little labs that you just did. And what you were after was going to this website that was on lenses and mirrors. And we started with mirrors. Come on, move. There we go. We started with mirrors. And what we were trying to learn with this whole thing here is, remember, we drew ray diagrams to find out that if we had the object out here somewhere, being the candle in lab, that object out here, it's going to emit photons. Those photons are going to strike the mirror, and they're going to ricochet back. And they're going to go down through this thing called the focal point. Okay? And those photons can be traveled or followed. Okay? Now, if you do more than one ray, you can follow photons that, well, if we do another one down through here that travels through the focal point, what can happen is that those photons go through the focal point, hit, and we know that they go back parallel. The point with all of it is that where all these photons emitting from this candle, the entire length of the candle, all will cross at this point right here. That is known as the image. It is a real image. It's inverted, and it's, well, it can be projected on a piece of paper. And if we take, the whole point of the lab was if we do this and we move it way out here, what do you notice happens to the size of the image? It gets smaller and smaller. And then out here, the image gets larger and larger. We keep going, going, going until suddenly we get inside the focal point, and boom, now the image becomes virtual and it's on the inside. And in our lab, it's kind of cool. You'd have done this. You'd have slid this candle and whammo, you'd suddenly see it inside. And now you notice it's a virtual image. It's magnified and much larger, and it's in the mirror. So you can't project this on a piece of paper. That's why it's called a virtual image, okay? But that's the whole idea, is that we put them inside there, and it suddenly now becomes a virtual image. And look at how big that gets. Okay, and then boom, focal point, it sends away off into the middle of nowhere. You think it's way, way huge, way out there. And then here, you move back and forth, and you can see what happens to the image. It's real, and it gets farther away and much larger, but it's still inverted. Now we switch to lenses. It's kind of the same dealio, except the image is on the other side because it goes through. And now this is a convex lens. They call it converging. I just call it convex. And now same thing. If we take that object, that candle we would have had in lab, and we slid it way out here and slowly started moving it forward, what do you notice happens to the image? It gets larger and larger and larger and larger and larger. Okay, you're magnifying it. That's the idea, is you're making it. This is how projectors work and that kind of stuff. They have a lens, a converging lens, a convex lens that puts the image in there, but they actually have another lens that flips it back up in the correct display. Now, if you keep sliding this, suddenly it's going to get to the focal point, and it's going to switch. And now, where does the image show up? It shows up on this side. So if you tried looking from over here that way, you'd see nothing. You'd have to get on this side, look through the lens, and suddenly you get it closer here, it gets smaller. You put it farther away, oh, it gets bigger, closer, smaller, bigger, whatever else. Play with that when you're a little kid. Guess what this thing here is called? A magnifying lens. And that's the idea. Okay? Is that a magnifying lens takes this object and it tricks your brain into thinking it's gigantic back here as an image. Okay, that's a virtual image. It's erect. And if we slide this back over here past focal point, now suddenly it's a real image and it's inverted. Okay, so those are some of the funky things that can happen with lenses. And hopefully you got that from the lab. You answered the questions correctly. It's exactly what we'd have done in class doing this lab. Okay? All right, let me know if you got any questions.